a startup phase is the hardest phase. It is the hardest phase in business, and it's the riskiest. And so if you don't realize that going in, or if you're not willing to put in that kind of time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears, if you're not willing to do that, don't even start, because you're just going to be disappointed and you're not going to make it. You have to be really willing to go all in and be 100% committed to what you're doing. If you really work with someone that has walked the talk and they've done it, they really can speed your success and help you. But you still have to have the mindset. You still have to be willing to make the commitments. Focus is a huge, huge factor in success today. I even teach that too. Stay focused. Hit that $1 million mark first with what you're doing, and then expand.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Beinhacker, and we got another great guest. We're going to talk a little bit about growth strategies and hear Ann's story. So if you are listening on your favorite directory, leave us a 5-star review whenever you can. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like us, and keep us connecting with great guests. So let's get on with the show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests, where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode. All right, Ann, thanks for joining me. Thanks for your patience. Sorry I was a few minutes late. Not
No
a late
worries.
person. I don't like to be a late
It
person.
happens.
Yeah, I know, but I don't like to make you wait. So, all right. So I'm glad we connected. And I always love to talk about this stuff for business owners and how to, grow their business. I mean, it's all about business development, right? And sales and marketing and everything. So, but let's talk about your background first. And, what your expertise is and where you got your training and your whole career. And then we can talk about how you got into what you're doing now.
Sure, I'll give you the quick version. So after leaving college, I went into corporate. I was in business management in retail in a large retail organization, running multi-million-dollar departments. So it was a billion-dollar company, and did that for 13 years. Left that to be a stay-at-home mom, and the math did not work with my husband's paycheck. And I started my first business. Since then, I've been an entrepreneur for going on 35 years, I think, about, yeah. And I've built 7 businesses.
Yeah.
I've sold 5 and I'm still running 2.
Okay. So I mean, I don't want to jump back too far, but did you have your MBA or was it an undergraduate business degree?
No, no.
None of
Everything
that.
I learned was, I did when I went to school, I actually went to school for business retail management.
Okay.
So it was not a 4-year college. I went to college. I did not love it. So it was more of a technical school that
Hmm.
was really geared towards that. And went into retail management and then learned a lot about business. Also, my dad was an entrepreneur while I was growing up. So I did learn a lot. I think subconsciously about entrepreneurship and
Right.
what it took to run a business.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot in corporate, but when I started my own business, it was a lot of school of hard knocks. It
Right.
was a
Well,
lot
you
of
said you
trial
were
and
in
error.
corporate for 13 years, so you didn't
Mhm.
come out of school and start running the business, multi-billion
No,
dollar
no,
business. So,
not at all. I went into retail management and then through that. But when I was running departments, it was a large, really high end department
uh-huh.
store,
Yeah.
and I worked in all different departments. Many of them, when I first started, they were $1 million departments, and then
Yeah.
as I continued to grow my skills, I was working in multi-million-dollar departments. But I was in charge of everything. I
Yeah.
ran the cosmetics area at one point in a high end store, and I had over 30 women that worked under me. And I want to tell you, nothing will grow you like having 30 women that run their own cosmetic lines under
Yeah.
you. That will grow you faster than everything. But I learned about leadership, I learned about
Sure.
management. I was in charge of my own budget, I was in charge of my own
Like
hiring.
there were companies within a company.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I was an entrepreneur, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the marketing, I was in charge of running my own events and things outside of what the corporate structure was marketing. So I learned a lot about things that way. But even as a kid,
Yeah.
I was always making my own money. I always found ways to make my own money and
Right.
sold and
Right.
so I think I've always in a way been an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean that is what the department store model is, right? Each
It is.
department is like
Yes.
runs itself kind of,
Mhm.
and then reports back to the upper thing. So, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was kind of like you when I was growing up. I always was doing something in the summer
Mhm.
times or after school, or I was a tennis player, so I'd string rackets on the weekends, and I was,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I used to detail cars and stuff in the summer times just because to make not just extra money, but I wanted to run a business. So, what was the first business that you opened?
Yeah, so the first business I opened, I didn't really have any opportunity. We didn't have the internet. I didn't have a computer, all
Right.
those
Yeah, me
things.
neither. Right. Yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly.
I had to look at what were the opportunities around me, and we lived in the country outside of a small town. There wasn't any opportunity. If I went back into retail, I would have been driving an hour, and I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
So I knew how to make things. So I was fairly crafty,
Okay.
and I was very creative, and I had a box of stuff that I just used to kind of do crafts as more of a stress reliever. But even when my son was born, I made a lot of things for his nursery. And so that was just something, a creative outlet for me. But it
Right.
also was a good stress reliever for me when I was in the corporate space. And so I had this box of stuff and I thought, there's a little store in town and they do consignment and maybe I can just make some things and take them in there and see if I can sell them and make a little bit of extra money. So it
Yeah.
didn't really start like a business. It was like,
Right.
how can I make a little bit of
Yeah,
extra
it was
money to
like
help my
Etsy
family?
is today, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It really was an
Right.
accidental thing.
Yeah.
So I started, took some things in after a couple weeks, they didn't sell. And I said, what is selling? My market research, what is
Yeah.
selling?
Right. I want to do the stuff that sells.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
she said these rabbit dolls. And I thought, I have no clue how to make a rabbit doll. And at that time, the craft industry was exploding across the United States. And I thought, I don't know how to make a rabbit
What's a
doll. I didn't
rabbit
even,
doll, Ann?
well, it was a doll that was like a rabbit,
Look
but
like a
it was
rabbit.
dressed. And, back then people decorated with them and they put them on their beds and they put them in their living rooms. Oh, I
Okay.
know. And,
I
and so I
remember
thought,
that
I have
wave.
no clue how to do this.
Yeah.
So I went and I looked at a lot of different patterns and I
Right.
borrowed my mom's sewing machine and I went home and I designed my own. And long story short, that turned into a global doll
You're
business
kidding.
that I did for
Yeah.
7 years. Yeah, I was shipping all over the world. I was in multiple stores across the country. I had a lot of other moms that worked for me that were coming in and out of my house. I was basically running a manufacturing company out of my
Right.
home.
Exactly. So how did
Um,
you? Well, was it because the doll that you made was so popular, or just because the item itself? It didn't matter what you were doing with them. They just Or
Yeah,
you were
it
just
it
great at
actually
marketing? What
was.
was what was
Well,
it?
when I took it in, I put a different spin on what was already being sold.
Okay.
And when I took it in, I made a couple of them and I took them in and she said, "Oh my gosh, these are beautiful." She said, "These will sell." And they flew off the shelf.
Okay.
Well, long story short, over time, then this Noah's Ark material came out that was really hot for nurseries. A lot of
Okay.
people, I'm also a Christian,
Okay.
so I thought, you know what? I got the idea. Like I always say, everything's God inspired for me, but I got the idea. I can do a Noah's Ark line. I can do like animals, like 2 by 2. So I had lions and I had tigers and I had
Ah,
all these, and that exploded my business. They were numbered, they were signed, they were collectors items. It just literally exploded my business, and I loved it. It was so much fun to get to design the next set of dolls, and they even ended up on. They were chosen to be on the cover of an international craft magazine.
ah. Is
And
that what expanded the business
yeah,
worldwide?
yes, so I did craft. I did print
Yeah.
ads and in the hottest international magazine, which
Right.
was not a cheap thing to do,
Yeah, when
and
we were
that's
growing up,
how.
there's no internet, so
No, 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 we didn't have
yeah,
any of that.
none of that stuff.
And yeah, and so that's how it really grew globally. And then there were also a lot of craft stores across the country where you could rent space and you could have consignment. So, I mean, literally, UPS was at my house every day picking up boxes and I was shipping. And I think I was in, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 different stores across the country in different states.
Mhm.
And I remember it's funny, this just came up on a podcast I was on a couple days ago, but I remember my first call. Back then, people had to call you in
Yeah,
order.
right, of
And
course.
the magazine came out, and a woman called me from Iceland. And again, this doesn't sound like a big deal today because we're so global, but back
Right.
then that was a
That
big
was
deal.
right, like
I was like, oh my gosh, Iceland. I mean,
Iceland.
that was just the
Right, might as well
coolest
have been
thing.
Mars, right? I mean,
Yes,
it's so far
yes.
away.
That was so cool. So
Yeah, that is cool.
yeah, so I did that for 7 years. I also designed my own patterns and went into the pattern side of the business as well. And
So
then when I
you must have been, though, having a company make these dolls. You weren't making them in your
no, I was
right?
making them.
You were still making them at this point?
I had women that were cutting things for me. I had women that were stuffing doll
All
parts for me.
in your area?
All in my area, a lot of other moms. It was really great because I was able to help a lot of other
That
moms
wanted to do the
financially
same
help
thing,
their
right? Stay home,
families
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Sure.
So I had, women that would come in and do cutting, or they would take things home and they would cut parts for me. I did all of the finishing work. That was the one thing I just couldn't let go of. It was like, these are my designs.
Right.
And so that, but I didn't do all the basic rinse and repeat stuff. So I eventually had women that were doing all of
Filling
that stuff.
orders and
So
stuff.
yeah, so they would bring big bags of stuffed doll parts to me,
Right.
and loads of clothes and things that they
Yeah,
had
it's probably
cut
stuff all
and
over your house, I
sewn.
can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was pretty rinse and repeat. I mean, it really was kind of an assembly line thing.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I did all of the, and then I would have women that would come, and help me package and box stuff, and so things like that, things that I didn't really need to be doing.
Right.
But I also did a lot of craft shows and things like that. So I also did those things,
Travel and
but
stuff.
I did the finishing work. So it was, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was a lot of long hours. It
Yeah, I'm
was,
sure.
it was a grind. And
Yeah.
so I went into the pattern side of it, and that was very rinse and repeat as well. Once I designed, it was just, print and
So
package.
meaning you make a pattern that someone could buy and then make
Yes, they
themselves.
could buy it and make, yes. And so
Sure.
I came on board with the pattern company and started doing my own designs that way. So that was another revenue stream in my
Yeah.
business. And it was more passive. It was more passive revenue. But I didn't love it. It was so boring. I mean, I love doing the design, but outside of that, it was really boring.
Yeah, because it was just
Um,
all standard. You do the
yeah,
same
so
things.
I did it 7 years. It's crazy. Again, this was about 35 years ago. I was
Yeah.
making over a six-figure income
Right.
doing that out
Crazy.
of a spare bedroom in my
Yeah.
house. So,
So how
yeah,
did you
so
come around to sell the business? Like what happened? Did somebody
yeah,
approach you or
so interesting enough, we were seeing a lot of imports like from China. And so, once they took off across the United States, China grabbed onto it.
they
And
always
so
do,
everybody
right?
was getting things made in China. And I almost couldn't buy I couldn't buy the stuff to make the dolls. as cheap as China was selling the whole finished product. So
Right.
I saw the market changing, which was another reason why I kind of spun off into patterns. And I
Got it.
saw the market changing and I thought, okay, it's this is going to move, this is going to change. And so when I sold my patterns and my designs.
That's what they bought.
Yeah, so that's what I sold out when I sold that business,
Right.
because of my products I basically sold. So
Yeah.
yeah, so what was left to sell in the business was my designs and my proprietary, you know,
Right.
uh ideas, and so that's what I sold. And then went into my second business that really didn't start as a business either. That was in fitness, and started teaching fitness classes. That's a whole
Totally
nother
unrelated
story.
to well, you're into
Well,
fitness,
so I
right?
gained a
So
lot of weight in that first business, and I'm like, I've
yeah, you
never
get
been
in
out of
shape.
shape in my whole life, and so I just started getting in better shape and started learning more about nutrition, and really fell in love with it. And I thought, gosh, there's nothing for the people around here.
Right.
Really, at that time, health clubs weren't on every corner,
Yeah. Nowadays,
and
everybody's got a yoga studio
oh
and this
yeah,
and
yeah,
that. Not
yeah.
like
No,
now.
back then there was nothing really.
Right.
And
Right.
so I started teaching classes, fitness classes out of a community hall, um, in a very small town, actually a village of 98 people.
Yeah, okay.
And that turned into two health club centers, two weight loss centers that I
Really.
later sold all four of those. And
Yeah, but
uh,
you were in a world when you were in corporate that was like that didn't frighten you, like to build a department and have people and to, you know what I mean? Like you had developed all those skills. But it's interesting,
yeah,
like in a small town, it wasn't like you were a physiologist and you had all these degrees in, right?
not
And
at all.
no,
No.
but they trusted you. You were a workout person. You were in shape,
Yeah.
right? And you're probably a pretty convincing salesperson too. So,
When you're
people
passionate
confidence.
about what you do, I always say
Yeah,
enthusiasm can go a long way in sales, right?
right.
I mean, when I started that fitness business, I just went to a back to school barbecue to
Yeah.
the moms I knew and said, "Hey, I want to do fitness classes. Do you want to take them with me?" And
That was it.
I
Like that's how it started.
that was it. I took flyers. I made a
Yeah.
flyer
Right.
and I took it to a back to school barbecue and said, I'm going to do this. I found a community hall, which was the Knights of Columbus Hall. And
Okay.
I
Right.
asked them if they would let me do classes there. And they charged me a little bit of money to do classes there a couple days a week. And
Right.
these women paid me and it kept growing and growing. And I came up with I call it my $1 million first offer, came up with with a program that was it was a 30-day program, really
Okay.
5 days a week for 4 weeks.
Okay.
And it included nutrition because at that point I had already done some schooling for nutrition and I was helping people with meal
Got it.
plans. But I
Yeah.
put a program together and it ended up with its own brand and it made over $1 million. And it was like, that was the thing that really put my business on the map and allowed it to expand. And it was, 5 times the price of my regular
Yeah.
fitness fees. And I had people that were driving 30 and 40 miles to come to that program because the results were amazing.
Wow.
And it just continued to help my club expand and grow. And
And you
yeah,
had
I
your own
was in that
place, right? You weren't
industry.
using the Knights of Columbus anymore.
No, no,
You
no. I
rented
actually
space,
had
right?
5 locations.
Oh, wow.
I kept growing. So I bootstrapped.
Yeah.
So every time I would get more money, I remember when I had all these people driving out from a close by town, which was maybe 15 miles. I say 15 miles away. And they were carpooling out to my body blast program,
Yeah.
which was at 5 in the morning. So at 4:30 in the morning, they were all
Right.
driving
Of
out
course.
and they said,
Devoted people.
you need to be in Troy, like, which was the town, the bigger town. And they said, you need to be in there. And I just kept thinking, oh gosh, by then the YMCA had opened and there was another club. And I just thought,
It was growing.
yeah, there's already competition. It's not a very big town. And I thought, I just don't know. And I remember when I finally decided, okay, I need a bigger space. I couldn't hold everybody for my programs. I was turning people away. And I remember saying to my husband, I really need to expand. And he said, well, if you can find a place with rent where you're not locked into a lease, that was how I did things. He said,
Right.
then, go ahead. And I
Right.
found a place that would just let me do month to month. They didn't do a lease, but I wasn't in that place very long and it grew again. And it just kept growing until I ended up with
Right.
a 16,000 square foot facility. So but I ended up with 5 locations, like literally just kept moving from these different locations. I kept growing, and I'd open a bigger place, and I'd grow, and I
When
remember
you say 5, you mean you moved 5 times or you had
5
5
times,
different
yes.
oh,
I
okay.
moved 5
Yeah.
times before I ended up in my biggest club that actually is still there. It's already been through 3 owners
Okay.
besides me, or
Right.
2 other owners besides me. So when I sold it, they kept it for about 4 or 5 years, and then now somebody else owns it.
It's
I've
still
even
going.
been back there as a member. It's kind
Really?
of funny. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So,
funny. So, yeah,
um,
okay, so and you got out of that, why? Because it just had grown to a level and you're just, it's time to move on? Is that what it
yeah, it's kind of funny because as I kept investing back into that business, and really as it kept growing, I kept putting money back into it. And that's how it, like I said, I bootstrapped.
Right,
And when it grew to when it got to the place where it was 16,000 square feet, and we kept adding things, like I added Pilates, we added a spa, we added a weight loss center. I had 2 businesses inside of one. So, but they were 2 separate businesses, but they fed each other.
right.
And so as that kept growing, I thought, this could almost be like a retirement package, or like some sort of retirement for our future, and a little nest egg. And so from then, when I made that decision, like, I'm going to sell this someday because I've
Yeah,
really got something here.
right.
And by then I had lots of employees, and it was running, basically running itself.
Yeah,
And so I just thought, this is going to be an opportunity to sell and put a lot of money in the bank. And I
yeah,
don't know what I'll do beyond that. So then I started making decisions based on
with
that.
that in mind.
Yeah, with that in mind. And when I made the decision that I was going to sell it, I thought, I kind of want to get back to my roots and work being smaller, now that I've run a big club and I've seen the difference. But the things that I love to do the most were the smaller things, like my main program, the high end program. And I thought, I'm going to open a training club for women and run high end boot camps and have a
Like
weight
a
loss
CrossFit type
center.
of a thing, right?
Yeah, yes. And it was, but back then
The
CrossFit
early
wasn't
days.
around.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
didn't know what that word was.
And
Right,
so I went ahead and opened a second location with in mind that I would sell the bigger club and all of that. And then that took off. But I was driving about 45 minutes between the 4 businesses. And so it was a bit crazy. And I was like really living my business. And so at that point, we started kind of looking for a buyer for the bigger club, because honestly, my passion was in the smaller club. I was loving that more. I was
yeah,
actually really loving that. And here's what was so interesting: because of the fees and everything we charged, and what I had learned along the way about a premium model,
right,
that club was making almost as much money as the big one. And
right. The profit margin was
the
much
overhead
bigger.
wasn't there, the
Sure,
management wasn't there. It
right.
was an easier model, and
Bigger's
I
not
just
always
thought,
better.
"Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
right.
this is the thing." But so I did that, had that for a few years,
Mhm.
and had a buyer. So the business coaching, I stepped into business coaching about 15 years ago. And what started that is I actually hired a business coach, and it was so impactful to my business. I thought, oh my gosh, I wish I would have had this for all of those years. And I learned so much from her, and I learned so much about marketing from her. And all of a sudden I became just on fire for business.
Even
Like,
after you'd been so successful with these other
yes, but
things?
it's so funny because when you're trying to figure things out yourself, and we didn't have access to business coaches and all the things we
Right.
have access to now. I remember I used to hate the business part. I used to tell people, I mean, I loved having my own business. I loved the creative part, but I hated like the business
Yeah,
stuff.
everybody does. That's why they ignore this once
Yes.
the
And I
business
used to
is out.
tell people, I
Right,
hate the business stuff. I love what
right.
I'm doing. But as I learned from that coach, it became so impactful. I thought, oh my gosh, I want to help people. I've gained all these years of experience.
Yeah,
I've done things here. I want to help people with their business. I was already out there networking. And as I found, I talked to a lot of small business owners. I realized they didn't know what I knew. And
right.
so they
Most people
started
don't.
asking me questions, and
Things
they
that you were
started,
intuitive to you, right? You okay?
excuse me,
Okay.
hope you'll edit this.
No, we're
No,
live.
it's live. We're
Yeah,
live.
pretty
Sorry about that.
much.
Talking too much. And I don't have any water with me, which is dumb. I just got off of a podcast.
Yeah,
So
I'd pass you a glass, but I can't do
yeah,
that. So
no worries. So yeah, I started thinking, I think I want to do this. I think I want to coach people. And I really became a student. Then I did more formal training, and I didn't go to college, but I did a lot of programs, read a lot of books, anything and everything I could get my hands on with business and marketing and sales, and
Yeah.
really beefed up my skills.
Voracious.
And
Yeah.
my first couple clients, I said, "Hey, I think I want a business coach. Do you mind if I coach you
Right.
and
For
see if
free.
I
I
can
know a
do
lot of
it?"
people do that. Right.
I
Sure.
wanted to see if my skills would
And see how I
transfer.
can do. Now that was really your third business, right?
That was I had I had five that at that point
Oh, that
when
were
I
part of the whole
yeah,
the
yeah, they
workout
were different.
environment,
They were separate businesses. I could have
separate
sold them
companies.
separately. I didn't, but yeah, so when I did the business coaching, I was still running the other two, and the other two had sold.
Okay.
The health club and the weight loss had sold, and then I still had the training center and the weight loss.
Got it.
And I stepped into coaching, and it just took off, and I was like, this is my next thing. So now
Right.
it's time to sell those. I don't want to be held back by those
Right.
businesses anymore. This is where my new passion is. So now I've been doing it 15 years. So
Okay, so this is all great picture and everything, but we got to get under the hood, so to speak. So now you've been coaching for 15 years, right? You
Mhm.
must have made like some mistakes and things that you did wrong. So yeah. So I want to hear about the things that, because I know that, look, I think a lot of it is, you just know it's going to be successful, right? It's just a question of how, not a question of if. A lot of people don't feel that way, but you definitely, and sometimes you learn more from mistakes, right, than you do from
Yes.
successes. But from the outside, it looks like this great thing. You grew the business, you sold it, it was great. And so tell me about some things. Like, let's go back to the first business when you were doing the dolls, right? That was probably the simplest business. What kind of mistakes you made there and what you learned from those mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, I had to learn the kind of the financial side of it.
Yeah,
How Because when you're making products and you have money going back out for a product, your cost of goods, you have to really learn how to manage the cash flow
yeah,
and be able to put money back into the business to make the products, or you're going to be out of business.
right.
So that was a huge thing for me to learn, because even in retail, even though I had to manage the department budget and things
Yeah,
like
you
that.
had
I
buyers
wasn't
and stuff,
buying the
right?
products,
No, but you
right?
had people doing it for you.
Exactly. They were buying and they were bringing it in. I was managing the people
Got
and
it.
the payroll and things like that. So that was a big piece of learning the financial side of things and how to manage product. Um, so that was really big. And also realizing that um, eh, really how to expand the business without going out of business.
Right,
So it wasn't just the money, but also how to expand and grow faster and bigger, but not kill yourself
right,
and not lose everything, in the same time frame. So those were things that I had to learn. How do you scale this? Advertising. I had to learn a lot about marketing and advertising because I was responsible for all of that. The sales piece wasn't so much a big deal at that point because the sales were kind of coming in off of the things
right. Well, you were doing a good
I was
job. You had a good
doing.
product, and
Yeah,
people wanted to
yes.
be
Yeah, if you have a
both
good product,
businesses,
right?
right?
But the marketing was a huge
It was
piece
all
that
what
I
it
had
was
to
all
learn.
print advertising those days, right? I mean, there wasn't any
It was.
social media postings or anything,
No,
right?
are you kidding?
No.
No, I had no idea. That was not even a thing. So yes, and the thing that people don't understand now that we had back then is it was so much more costly to do business.
Yeah,
It's so much cheaper to do
yeah. You can
business
be
now.
a solo and really do a lot of
Yes, it's
promotion
so
now
much
for
more
free.
profitable. Oh my
Sure.
gosh.
Yeah.
Most people would go out of it, which is why the failure rate was so high, because it was so much more expensive. I mean, I talk about when I used to advertise in those international magazines, a small ad, like a quarter page ad, was like $1,500.
Yeah, which is a
That
lot of
was
money a
that
long
was
time ago.
30 years ago,
Yeah,
35 years ago.
that's a lot of money
And
now for an ad.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And I would have to often pay for 3 ads up front, like 3
right.
different magazines, before I even knew if that ad was gonna pull. So you
Now you
were
can
having
test everything like right away.
yeah, you were testing with your bucks, let me
Right.
tell you. It wasn't testing $1 a day on Facebook ads. You were testing with big dollars. And so if that particular doll didn't sell or that particular ad didn't pull, you were just out that money.
And you wouldn't know right
Um,
away either.
no, you wouldn't know. You would have to be almost 3 issues ahead. So you
Yeah.
were paying out, think about close to $6,000 before you even knew if an ad was going to pull.
Yeah.
So those were all things that were just really lessons that I had to learn. But even expanding my business, when we get into the other businesses,
Yeah.
my husband and I, during the 2008 recession, oh gosh, we took out a loan to expand into that big club. And right after we did, we had a very low price. That was a higher end club. And right after we took out a loan and a 7-year lease, now most people would flip out about that,
Right.
a 7-year lease for several $1,000s a month.
Yeah.
And
Good commitment. You had to
most
personally
people,
guarantee it, right?
yeah, you had to
Yeah.
personally guarantee it. And so we put everything on the line, property we had built up, our home, everything. And that was a very, very scary thing. And then right after we did that, not only did we have a $19 a month club come in right down the street with brand new equipment and brand
Right.
new everything, and they were just using it as a tax write off. So they didn't even care if they made money, which makes it even harder.
Right.
We hit the 2008 recession and the housing market crashed.
Yeah.
And here I am with this expanded club, a 7-year lease, lots of employees. I mean, it was just crazy, crazy times. I just worked my butt off to
Yeah.
to
Just
keep it afloat.
work harder. Right.
And yeah, that was it. And we just kept going. So all those things were just huge, huge lessons. But those also were things that became opportunities. Like now
Yeah.
I
They
started
usually
looking,
do.
yeah,
Right.
I started looking for a way to differentiate myself, which is where the weight loss program came in, the weight loss center.
Yeah.
Now we had that. The other club didn't have that. So I just started setting myself apart. I brought in programs. I did really smart things. And again, just intuitive, I guess, but I wanted to bring in spinning. You remember when spinning kind of came
That's
onto
got
the scene.
started. Soul
Yeah, but
cycle and all that
I
stuff.
had just invested and I didn't really have the money to bring it in because I just poured a ton of money into this
Because
business.
those you got to get the bikes and you need the equipment right and you
And
need the
it's
room and
expensive,
yeah,
yes.
sure.
And so what I did is I actually sold the program to members as a separate program. And I took their money and I said, if it doesn't fly, if we don't get the interest, I didn't go out and ask everybody, hey, are you interested? Because they would all say yes, right?
Right.
But until people lay down their money, they're not serious. So I put together a package. I did all the math. I crunched all the numbers. I'm like, okay, this is how many members I have to have buy this program. This is how many packages I have to sell to pay for the bikes. And then once I pay for those bikes, I'll be able to be profitable going forward. And so I had all those bikes paid for before I ever even brought them into the club. And I just held everybody's money almost like in a trust. I was very upfront and honest about it. If we don't get
You get your
the
money back.
interest,
Right.
I'll give you your money back. And so I just held all the money until I had the money. And then I went out and bought the bikes. And I did that once I learned that little trick, I did that
Yeah.
with almost everything. I
Yeah.
did it when I brought in, barbell classes, and I did it anytime I needed to go out and buy like class equipment, and because classes were included. So anytime I needed to go out and buy class equipment or anything like that, I brought it in as a separate program. I charged for it.
Let people
Over
sign up and then
time,
you
that
know.
became part of the club, but
Right.
for maybe a couple of years, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Pilates, I did the same thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I did some smart things like
Yeah.
that.
No, good things that business
Mhm.
owners don't. A lot of times they build it and they think, oh, this is a great idea. And they're going to come and they don't.
Yeah,
You got to gauge
exactly.
interest. There's no
Yeah,
question about it.
I always say, we used to have a joke like, don't ask them if they want red or blue because they'll tell you they want red and blue, and you'll go out and you'll bend over backwards to try to do red and blue, and then neither one. They don't want
Right.
either one. So I have learned that the hard way. It's kind of like now I teach people, don't build a program until you sell it. Sell the
Right.
program once you know people, they lay down their money or they have the interest. You build the program.
You're right. They talk a lot until they have
Oh,
to get money
it's
down.
so easy for people to say, "Yeah, that sounds great.
That's
Let's
awesome.
do
And then
it."
they
And
walk
you can
away.
go broke.
Right.
Yes, you can
Real
go
fast.
broke. Yes, really fast
Yeah.
doing that. And same thing with equipment. So anything and everything I added, I I tried to be much smarter about
Strategic
it.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but that's part of bootstrapping.
All right. So let's take a quick commercial break, and then we come back. I'm going to pose the question because you brought up the issue of, we both know like 35, 40 years ago, I was coming out of college and it was different. You had to do a lot of things. It was more expensive. Then why is the failure rate still as high for different reasons, but still as high as it, was back then? So let's take a quick commercial and then we'll come back. Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show. All right, Ann, so these are great stories because, people think like running your own business is like, oh, you have all this freedom and you can do whatever you want. But you really, you work harder as a business owner, I think. I find that, than when you're working for somebody else and you go to work and you finish your job and you go home and, don't have any ownership. So now you've been coaching now, you said 15 years?
Almost 15, I think, yeah.
And that's all you do. I mean, you have
that's
different
about
kinds of programs, but that's all you do, right?
So I have also my media and marketing agency.
Okay.
Expert in You, and that really has just kind of evolved out of my coaching because I was sending people away to go get a lot of services done
Right,
to build up their brand and their influence and start their podcast and all that. And now we are able to actually provide all of their services, write their book, get them featured in the media. So that agency has now become a second business, but they're
complementary
really integrated and they complement each other. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was saying before, why do you think, so you and I both know there's such a wealth of information out there. You can advertise and you can promote for very little money when you get started. You can test things, ads very quickly and things like that. But I think the failure rate is as high as it's the same, right?
It is.
Less than 5 years, 80%. And even though that doesn't even count the ones that struggle and stay in business, So what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of things actually. I think that people think it's easier than it is, and
Right.
so they think that they could probably do the same thing they did as a job, and they expect the money to just flow in. They don't realize that it takes 1 to 2 years to really start making any money in business,
Right.
if you're lucky, right?
Yeah. Lucky.
And so you've got all of that time that you have to put into it. So a lot of people don't plan ahead. I think that's one thing. Two is I think people do not treat it like a business. So I use this a lot when I'm working with entrepreneurs. And I say, if you had a storefront, because I came from this world,
Right, because you
and you had
did.
a
Right.
7-year lease with
Yeah.
thousands of dollars a month, right? And you
Right.
had to show up and you had to open the doors and you had to do everything and run everything. Would you be doing things differently than you're doing right now? And that's such a big aha for them because they're like, yeah, I probably wouldn't be taking my kids to the park and I probably wouldn't be. So
Right.
a lot of times they just don't do what they need to do to get it going. It takes a
Right.
lot of hard work to get a business off the ground. A startup phase is the hardest phase. It is
Yeah.
the hardest phase
It's
in
the
business.
riskiest. Yep.
And it's the riskiest. And so if you don't realize that going in, or if you're not willing to put in that kind of time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears, and that's what I say, it's blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to do that, don't even start
Right.
because you're just going to be disappointed and you're not going to make it. Um,
Yeah.
you have to be really willing to go all in and be 100% committed to what you're doing.
Right.
Also have the financial means to do it, whether you are going to work another job to support it. Your faster path is to get a coach or someone. I mean, I don't say that just because I am a coach, but I worked with a coach and I saw the impact. And I kept thinking, my gosh, if I would have had this 35 years ago, what a
Right.
game changer it would have been. So now but make sure you get one that knows what they're doing, not
Yeah. And
just
then one
somebody
that
that
fits with your industry and is like minded
exactly.
with you. It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody that has some depth of experience and didn't just fire up their laptop and do one thing and say, "Oh, I know how to do this."
Right.
You need somebody that's got a lot of experience. But if you really work with someone that has walked the talk and they've done it, they really can speed your success and help you. But you still have to have the mindset and you still have
Yeah.
to be willing to make the commitment. So I think that's a big factor. I also think that a factor that we have today is distraction. And that maybe wasn't a factor before. We didn't have everything so available to us.
Right.
Today it's like, oh, push the easy button.
Right.
Everybody
Like a
thinks
bad thing
yeah,
almost.
everybody
Yeah.
thinks you can push the easy button. We're so
Right.
used to everything being now. And business isn't like that. And building a business isn't like that. And so I think that in some ways that's been detrimental
Right.
to entrepreneurs and to their
Like it
mindset
looks like
even.
it's too easy and it's
It
not.
does. That's
Right.
exactly right. It looks like it's easier than it is.
Right.
And and I think there's so many different ways they can go that now distraction is a big factor. When I started that first business, okay, I'm going to do a craft business. That was it. I'm going to do
Right.
a craft business. When I started fitness, okay, I'm going to do a fitness business. I wasn't like, I'm going to do a fitness business and an e-commerce business and a
Right.
this business and a that business. And oh, I'm going to do
You
this.
stayed focused.
You
Yeah.
stayed focused. And I think focus is a huge, huge factor
Yeah.
in success today. And I even teach that too. Stay focused, hit that $1 million mark first with what you're doing and then expand.
Yeah.
Or if you expand, make sure it complements like what I've done with my agency. It's got to complement so they're
Right.
feeding each
It's
other.
got to make sense and not distract you from the other business.
Absolutely. But I think
Yeah.
those are the biggest factors I have seen
Now, I
in.
don't know if you did this back then because, you were figuring this out on your own, but do you encourage your clients to like write a business plan? I mean, be strategic about it. Because I find that if they put things down on paper,
Mhm.
you stay focused. It doesn't have to be some elaborate thing. Even the lean one, whatever it is, it's like one
Mhm.
page. But I find that that's one of the problems with distraction is that you can't do it in your head.
Right.
You have
No,
to
that's
kind of,
right.
right, be able to
Yes.
go back to it and say, wait, well, what was my thoughts there? And how do I want to
Yeah.
work this? And yeah, so how do you
Yeah.
work with clients that way?
Yes, so when I work with clients, we really map out where they want to go
Yeah,
and how what they want that to look like and what they want their life to look like. And I really simplify people's businesses for them. One of the reasons why I help people build a premium business is they can build that $1 million business with 10 or 20 clients. They don't
right.
have to
Because you're
have
offering a premium service that they can charge for.
exactly.
Right.
And so what does that look like? And then we can build the game plan from there and the marketing strategies and the packages and all of that kind of thing. So I do help them map that out and get really clear on that. That's such a huge piece because one of the biggest things I see too is people don't give it enough time.
Right.
Especially when they're starting up, they don't give it enough time. They think it should come really fast. And so now they're wanting to veer off this direction or that direction. So if we build out that game plan, and I'm really clear about this is how you have to work it, 1 year, one focus, one
Right.
whatever, it really helps them have more success and they can stay more on course.
Yeah, because even if you get distracted, you can say, well, wait a second, and you go
It
back to
doesn't
where you
align
were.
with what I want to do. Right.
Right. Now, are you
Exactly.
coaching in certain industries? Like, is it all health and fitness or
I don't coach in health and fitness
no?
hardly at all. No,
Oh, okay.
no, I mostly work with a lot of mostly B2B. So business coaches are people that are coaching in businesses, consultants,
Okay.
and a lot of professional service entrepreneurs. So a lot of agency owners. So those are more the people that I work with. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So you're coaching coaches.
Coaching coaches, consultants, and still they're still business owners, like agency owners or business owners,
Yeah,
right?
of
They're
course.
yeah,
They got
but
people working
in a
for
way,
them.
yes, coaching coaches, and that was not by design. That was actually by accident. Just FYI,
Okay.
I've worked in over 80 industries, so as a coach, so I've coached over 80 different types of industries. I fell into when I kind of came online. I was part of a business coaching organization, and a lot of their coaches were struggling. And I had found had kind of cracked the code, and I was coaching small business owners for years, and their coaches were struggling. And so this company was kind of sending people to me, like, "Look what Anne's doing," and I started helping them. And then I realized I was building that company's business.
Right.
I
Like,
was
wait a
helping
second.
them build their coaches, and I
Yeah,
thought,
which they can't do.
there's an opportunity here.
Right.
And so I kind of then started creating programs and helping coaches and consultants. And I worked with agency owners really since the very beginning. Um, like professional entrepreneurs
We're
is what
talking like marketing and advertising agencies,
yeah,
right?
it could be, or that any kind of really professional services. So it could be CPA firms, it could be,
Okay. Law
anyone
firms.
really selling professional services. But almost everyone I'm working with is in the B2B space.
Got it.
But I've worked with mindset coaches, but if they're not in B2B, I typically move them there. So even if they're
Right.
not in the B2B space, I move them there because that is my world and that's what I know the best.
Right. Well, I mean, they have the need and they have the money and they have a reason they can justify spending,
Exactly.
right?
Yes, that's right.
Because there's a
It's a
means to an end.
Yes, exactly. And I always say, when you're in a business, money is replaceable. And when you're with an income, it's not, right? I mean, you're working for that money. So, working with businesses, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, if you're selling services, working with businesses makes the most sense if you've got a good product that can really help them. Help them move forward and have better results because that money is going to be replaceable for them.
Right.
They're going to get an ROI. Whereas
Sure.
a consumer,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're
You
going to
can't
have to
do.
decide if that's important enough to them.
Right. There's going to be no connection between your coaching and their results. They're going to still, what do they feel
It's still
better? They have
money
a
out
better
of their
mindset,
pocket.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. It's a luxury.
When you're in a business, I always say your business is like a money tree, right? And it can
Yeah.
grow and grow and grow, and it can grow to whatever level you want. And you can, one of my clients says, you can have an orchard of money trees if you want. You can expand out and you can have an orchard. But when you are working a job and you're bringing in an income, you're limited. So you
Doesn't
may have
matter,
to
right?
decide, oh gosh, I mean, I dealt with this in the fitness industry. Is this health club membership more important to me than paying my electric bill, right?
Right.
When things got tough, it was the first thing to go. It no longer had the value to them unless they had the disposable income. But in a business, they have the opportunity to make the money back and they
Right.
have the opportunity to make more money. So as long as your product fits that, it just makes more sense.
Are there a lot of people that coach, like individual people that have nothing to do with it? Like I was
Oh yeah,
imagine
like if you think
coaches,
about life coaches,
lifestyle
I don't
coaches,
really
anything like
work with them too much. I don't. I mean, I have, but I
yeah,
really don't work with life coaches because they're coaching individual people.
right,
Even mindset coaches, I've actually worked with a lot of mindset coaches, but I've moved them into the business sector
right.
because really what they have is really valuable for the business sector
Yeah, very
anyway.
much so.
Yeah, but they don't think like that. Like they fall into what they see out there online. Like mindset coaches are coaching other, they're coaching
Yeah,
consumers
they're
and
trying to make you have
moms
a
and
better
yeah,
attitude and draw
yeah,
money to your life and all these kinds of things,
yes,
but n
exactly.
not because you're a business owner necessarily.
Exactly. But
Yeah,
I move them into business because those skills and those tools are so valuable to people in business, and they need that. And so not only does it help the business, but it also helps the coach because they can charge more,
right,
they have a more viable product,
right.
and they can. It's just like I'll give you an example. I had a coach that was charging about $1,500 for a 90-day program before she started working with me. After she started working with me, she was getting $50,000 clients. So
50,000.
50,000, yeah.
Yeah,
That's the difference.
maybe
Yes.
you're the mindset coach, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So really helping them, move into that higher end premium model. But I do that with all of my clients. That is the model that I teach them is how to get paid the most money for what they are doing. And that really comes down to all the things that I work with them on. Like I have a
Right,
client that, got a $400,000 client. So,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, but
So,
you're right because it doesn't come it comes down to how much you keep, not what you make. So
exactly.
you can have a
Yeah.
20 million. I knew a guy that had an $80 million family business, and I think what would be 10%? 80 million would be 8 million. They weren't showing 10% profits.
Oh,
They're making
gosh.
a lot of money, but it was a couple of $1 million, and they're
Yes.
working very hard.
Those are people that need a coach.
Yeah, unfortunately, they
Yes.
were a partner of mine. I don't talk to them anymore, but I don't know what happened to them. But they always had to have shifts and move. And they were it was crazy, like a gourmet
Yeah.
foods company. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not properly run. But I mean, I guess people. I don't know. I don't know what people want when it comes to business in terms of the results that they want. I think they just kind of it's a lifestyle. They're supporting their lifestyle. They're figuring it out. I think during COVID, that's what happened. A lot of people like their cash flow dried up, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm not making any money." Like they
Yeah.
didn't see that.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
mean, I worked with a lot of small businesses before I started working with the professional
right. You
entrepreneurs.
evolved to this.
Yes. And so when I talk about small businesses, I worked with a lot of contractors, landscape companies, and auto repair shops. But I worked with companies that were making several $1 million, and the owner wasn't making $25,000 a year. I
I
mean,
mean, that's
that's
crazy.
poverty,
You're
right?
working
In
for
our
other people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And so you have to look at all those things. And sometimes if they are putting a lot of money back into their business, those things might make sense as long as they can sustain their lifestyle.
right,
But and so, like a coach can look at that and see, what the situation is there and can help them through that. But that should not be a normal situation at all, that
no,
they're
that's not
working that hard
sustainable.
for nothing. No.
Now,
No.
was your mindset the same then in terms of, okay, I should help the contractor, the landscaper build more of a premium business than just mowing lawns on the weekends for
Yeah,
themselves?
I actually did do that. I always helped them separate themselves in the market so that they could really be seen as a premium company and could stand out against their competition. I did help them sell things that were higher priced. So, like, kind of position themselves in the market. I'll give you an example. I worked with a plumbing company, and one of their biggest products was the hot water heaters, but they were like these really high end hot water heaters, but they really weren't
The flash
positioning
boilers, you mean,
themselves.
those little ones that
Yeah,
heat the water
well,
real quick?
yes, but
Yeah,
this was several years ago, so they were a little bit different. But that was a big product for them, and it had a very high profit margin,
right.
which they don't look at stuff like that. Like,
No,
they don't look at the profit margins and all
right,
that. But it had a very high profit margin. And I said, why don't we start pushing like these products and positioning you as really the go-to for these products? And that really helped expand their business. But even just changing up their marketing and they're just, I look at a lot of things when I work with a
right.
business. When I worked with small business owners, I looked at everything from their financials to their payroll to their marketing,
Kind of have to, right?
all
To do
all
the right
areas.
job.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
So, but yeah, I would help them really figure out where's your premium offers that you have, whether that's a product or a service. If they didn't have one, I would help them develop one, and then we would position them that way in the market.
right. Well, it gives them
So,
protection in economic changes and
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. It makes such
competitors
a difference.
entering the marketplace, they can't compete because they don't do what you do.
Yes, yeah. Like I'll give you an example. So I worked with somebody that was a marketing agency, and he was out there selling. He did websites, and he did this, and he did that, and he did logos, and he did media. But
Right.
his highest offer was like $3,000. Now this was 15 years ago, and I said, you do all these things. Why don't we put all of this together, and then let's figure out who the market is for this? Well, we actually moved him into home care services,
Okay.
and he became a branding expert for home care services. And now all of a sudden he's selling 30 and 40 and $50,000 packages, not three. And he's selling the whole thing, right?
Right.
And again, this was 15 years ago. And
Right.
his business just exploded. And then we had to scale him. So then he had to bring in help and all of that. But it was just so much easier. So honestly, I've been doing this model that I do now. I've been
Yeah.
doing this probably all of my career, if I
Yeah.
really think about it.
It
So
sounds like
it's
it.
been a really natural thing for me to help any kind of business do, whether it was
Right.
auto repair or anything. It's like you've got to set yourself apart, and you've got
Yeah.
to have premium offers, and that has to be what you're out there pushing, and everything else becomes a downsell, because people are going to naturally come to you for all these other things, but sell the big thing. Sell the big
Right.
thing first. So that's what I help
All right.
people
So
do.
here's a hard question. This is a look inside yourself question, right?
Okay.
Because I've interviewed, I don't know, 400 people. I've worked with thousands of clients. I'm a business attorney. I've worked with thousands of
Hmm.
clients, business owners, failures, good ones, help them get out of trouble. You didn't graduate college. You
Hmm.
you you were like, this isn't for me. I met a lot of people that's the case,
Hmm.
but there's something about like you and like, so what do you think gives you the ability to see these things and to do these things and to help all these people that is not the case with the 350 other people that I've met, some of which are very successful,
Hmm.
you know, but it seems to be like it, and you've already demonstrated the fact that it doesn't really matter the industry where you're helping people. It doesn't really matter what they do. It could be
Hmm.
hard goods. It could be, whatever. What do you think? Why do you get it and other people don't? That's the
Yeah.
question.
I would say it comes down to two things.
Okay.
One, I really care. Like, I
Okay.
love what I do, and I
Okay.
really care about the people that I help.
Right.
That's what brought me into the fitness business. That's what brought me. I really wanted to help people. Same thing with my coaching. I had all this knowledge and this experience. I'm like, I can't keep this to myself, right? I have
Right.
to help other people with this. And so that would be the first thing I would
Right. But a
say.
lot of people
Just
care. They do.
yeah, but I have a passion for it. So
Yeah.
I'm
You
passionate
obviously
about
do.
what I
Right.
do.
Yeah.
The other thing though is I'm just not a quitter. I'm just,
Right.
when I commit to something, I commit to it. It
Right.
doesn't mean I don't want to quit at times. It doesn't mean I won't sit down and have
Right.
a good cry in a corner. I
But it
will. You
never
ask my
occurs to you to
husband.
quit, right?
He has seen a lot of tears through the years. But at the end of the day, I figure it out because I know. And the other thing, I have a very strong faith. And so everything that big moves and things like that I do with prayer. And when uh, things aren't working, I
You
go to
believe.
prayer. I
Right.
pray
Yeah.
about it, and I know that God's going to guide me, and He's going to
Right.
give me the steps, and that is a huge part. So I can sit there and say it's me, but I always give it to God, and I know He is. He's the author of all of this.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah,
religious or not religious, it's still an attractive thing, meaning we're attracting people. Like we attract what we believe in and what we think and
mhm.
what our faith is. And if you believe in bad things, you're probably just going to attract
Bad
bad
things.
things to yourself, right?
That's
So
right. Yeah.
a lot of that is mindset. But I got to say, you really have built a big. And I know you say coach, but you're really much more than a coach. I
I
mean,
am.
you're getting
Yeah.
in there and doing things that coaches don't do, and saying, "Hey, let's really take your business apart and look at all the parts." Right?
Yeah.
You're looking at the product and the marketing and the personnel and the finances, which are
I
probably
don't
like
really
the three
call
main.
myself a coach so much.
Right?
I'm more of a
You're not.
coach,
Yeah.
coachultant. Coach.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I really am kind of a cross between a coach and a consultant, because I am telling my clients a lot what they need to do, and I'm teaching them.
Right.
So I'm kind of all of that. Yes, for sure. So yeah,
Well,
coaching
most
is
coaches aren't going to say, "Hey, bring your P&L to the next meeting and your
no, no,
balance sheet.
no,
Let's look
no,
at."
not at all. Not
Right.
at all.
Your
So
marketing and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I can
so
understand how I
it's
can't imagine what you're going to do next in terms of the
Yeah.
next thing that'll grow out of whatever it is you're helping people with.
Though, to your question, one other thing I would add, and this
Yeah.
is a really important thing. I actually just did a video around this. I'm not afraid. I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not
No,
afraid
fear
to do
definitely
things.
backs
I
people up.
fear
Yeah.
I always say fear is like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger
Yep.
it gets. And
Not
so the
so
more you
fair,
push
not so
through it,
frightening.
yes. And so
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to take risk and do things because I know I'll always figure it out, or I'll find somebody that can help me.
Right.
And I have that attitude. And so I think that's a really important factor too when you're trying to build anything.
Yeah. It
You
also
can't be
seems like
afraid.
you take very calculated risks. You don't
Yes.
say, we're going to start a spinning program. Let's borrow $500,000
Right. I'm
and
very
buy
careful
bikes,
about it.
and then people will come. You say, how can we build this with as little risk as we can? Let's find out what people want. Let's get them to really commit, and then let's
Mhm.
do it that way. And that's
That's right.
smart. So, and I thought we were talking today mostly about, marketing and growth and things like that. But hearing your whole story is, what's the word? Motivational to people. And, I think, and I say this all the time, successful people do the things that unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. And if you really
100%.
care and you want to learn and meet people like you and talk to the right people who have been there and been successful, you too can you and I aren't going to guarantee anything, but you can improve your chances of success if you take the time. So
You know what? I believe anybody can be successful.
yeah,
I
no
do. I
question
really
about it.
believe that. Yeah. We
Yeah.
have more opportunity today than we've ever had in history.
And we shouldn't be at this kind of a failure rate. It
No,
really,
not at all.
no. So we keep doing what we do, and you keep
Mhm.
spreading the good word, meet with people.
Mhm.
I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and we'll check
Yeah.
back in. So on a Friday afternoon, I don't know what part of the country are you in?
I'm in Missouri.
Oh,
Where
so
are
you're
you?
like an hour behind me.
Where are you?
I'm in New Jersey, so it's 4
Yeah.
o'clock.
So you're Eastern. I'm Central. Hmm.
Got it. Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough sharing your story,
You are
telling
welcome.
the trials and tribulations, and good luck with the coaching. Good luck to all of your clients, because
Thank
they're
you.
obviously with the right person.
Thank you.
And let's stay in touch. We'll go to credits and wrap it up.
Sounds great.
Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.